Welcome to the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. It is getting close to 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and we're coming to you. It's Sunday, game in between Game 4 and Game 5 of the NBA Finals. We have first off, Clark. I thought we might get a championship out of one of these series, but the Panthers are down 3-1 and the Heat are down 3-1. So it's not looking good that we're going to get. Well, both teams already got one trophy. They both won their conference, but I don't know that we may not be getting the title, either title in South Florida, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I like put it this way. Technically, the series aren't over, but the Heat
Right.
series is over. Now, I'll give the Panthers more of a chance because I feel like being down 3-1 happens more in hockey, and the Panthers just did it in the first round. But they've not been in the lead for very many minutes in any of these games. I mean, they won game 3 in overtime. They had to come back. They had to score a goal with 2 minutes left in the third period just to tie to take it to overtime. So
Yeah.
and they got down 3-0 yesterday, and they almost came back. I mean, the last few seconds. I mean, damn, they got a couple opportunities there, and then all hell broke loose. They just started fighting like crazy, which was kind of, I don't know, which was entertaining. But yeah, I give them more of a chance, but I really doubt it's going to happen. Yeah, that's funny because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, damn, I was hoping like just one of these teams. Can I get one of these teams to win the championship? And yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, look, the Panthers at least have been in most of the games.
Right.
Listen, I wouldn't put it past the Miami Heat to win Game 5 though. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. I just don't
No,
think.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I don't. I don't think they're going to. I don't think anybody's going to beat the Denver Nuggets 3 games in a row. I don't care who you are.
No.
So that's not even. It's not what I'm worried about. And I thought disturbing. I mean, all right. So we'll move on to the. I mean, neither one of us are hockey experts. We only have a passing.
Yeah.
A passing. I mean, we understand the game, but we only have a passing understanding of these teams because we're not watching hockey the whole season. It's just really exciting to have the Panthers and the Heat in the finals at the same time. May never happen again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought Miami in Game 4 played. I thought they played pretty well. I just thought and it's kind of similar to Game 3. I thought that Denver just played better. There's not much else to say other than Jokic is just unstoppable, and there's just a level of talent and efficiency that Denver possesses that it's hard to touch, even if you're in the game with them. And the thing is, like, they won Game 4, like Jokic got in foul trouble, they took him out, and they still kept the lead. So it's it's a credit to how good the Denver Nuggets are. I'm not one of those who's going to jump in and criticize the Miami Heat. Well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. I think the Heat are doing about as well as they can do. I think that they missed some open shots.
You could say that like Struz and like Gabe Vincent could play better, but I mean, you know,
Yeah, they missed some open shots, and I really like the Heat. The Heat's offense, I think, throughout this series, they've generated good shots. They just haven't been able to make them. And then Denver is just dominating them inside the paint, and so that makes it pretty difficult. And Denver's got more shot makers, than Miami does. So it just makes it doubly difficult because you if you go through a stretch where you're struggling to score, even if you're playing good defense, it's just Denver's just too good. So I don't look at it as one of those things where what I don't like is some of the stuff that I've been hearing throughout the whole playoffs is, well, the Heat really aren't that good, and they kind of lucked their way into getting here and all of this nonsense. And I'm not interested in that. The Heat are really good. That's why they got to the finals. It's not an accident. You don't somehow, have a bunch of things go your way and make the finals. You don't do it unless you're really good. I don't care who's injured on the other side. I don't care what the deal is. you've done something. If you're making it to the finals, you're doing something right.
Yeah, but I mean, those takes are coming. And by the way, people are going to downplay the Nuggets winning the championship too, which we've talked
Yep.
about before. They're gonna. I saw something on Facebook today. A bunch of people are like, "Well, they beat Minnesota, and then they beat the Suns, and then they beat a 7 seed in the Western Conference Finals, and then they get to play an 8 seed in the finals." And it's just like, okay, really, this is what we're gonna do? Like, I, it's hilarious to me because I mean I'm going to go into the off season and I'm going to tell you, barring injury, I'm picking the Nuggets to win the championship next year. Because
Yeah.
why shouldn't I? Why should I believe in these other teams? All these other teams that you're trying to sell me on. Oh, they're going to make a move and they're going to. That's just crap. I don't buy that at all. So
Yeah, I was listening
um,
to on a Colin Cowherd show. Jason McIntyre is like he was trying to make this argument. He's talking about Denver's coach, that Michael Malone is a good coach, and I agree. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. But he's basically saying, look, he won the championship with Jokic and no other All Stars, and it's like, okay, I'm not gonna like. There are so many flaws in that argument that let's unpack them right here. Well, they have no other All Stars. You really think Jamal Murray is not playing at an All Star level? Like, honestly, look at the All NBA teams. Like, you'd rather have De'Aaron Fox over Jamal Murray? Really? You'd rather have Donovan Mitchell over Jamal Murray? Like, it just shows the flaws in all of this voting stuff. Well, they don't have another All-Star. It's like, okay, that is a crappy ass argument. Like, get out of here with that. Jamal Murray is better than most of the All-Stars. Okay? It's not a question of, plus this team is built really well. They got an actual legit roster around Jokic. So I agree with you. I'm tired of the nonsense. I'm tired of the trying to sort this thing out. And well, this team's not that good, and this team's really good. And the argument you just made about Denver, well, they beat Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix was favored to beat Denver. Denver beat them. The
exactly.
Lakers, Denver was a slight favorite. It was basically a 55-45 series, is what the general public's thought was. So they thought it was going to go 6 or 7 games. They swept them. Okay. So,
By the way, when you're the 1 seed, you play the 8 seed. Okay? So for people saying, "Oh, they only beat Minnesota," it's the 8s. What do you want? That's what you do in the first round when you're the number 1 seed, which they got by kicking everybody's ass in the regular season. Okay? And being one of the best teams in the regular season, if not the best team. Okay? So, yeah, I don't, and it's hilarious to me because like I'm assuming they're going to win the finals in 5 games. They swept the Lakers. They beat the Suns in 6, but Devin Booker went nuclear for 2 games. Okay, that's the only reason Phoenix won a game in the series. And then they beat Minnesota in 5. They almost swept. Okay, I think game 4 went to overtime. So like I don't they completely dominated. Okay, Jokic is putting up like historic numbers. Okay, what do you people want? Like literally, and also the whole they're not exciting. Fuck off. They're not exciting. Are you watching? They're not exciting. I mean, what do you like? It's just not.
it's
It just doesn't make any sense.
the basketball is fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, hang on just a minute. Dropping my mic here. The basketball is fantastic. So I'm not sure what people want. What do you want? I'm sorry they don't have Michael Jordan on their team. Like you want this thing to be exciting. They share the ball, right? The passing is beyond, people used to credit LeBron James with his passing, right? They used to be the talk of, anybody who's defending LeBron. That was what they said. Well, look at the passing. Well, Jokic is better at it.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the thought process of, I'm sorry it's not as highly rated as, a Lakers Celtics finals would be, but that's just kind of the way that it works.
Yeah, and
So
also I don't want to hear that the Nuggets got lucky, and if they were playing the Celtics, what they wouldn't have beat the Celtics? Really? You're that confident in the Celtics they wouldn't be fucking around against Denver and giving away games? And given the way Denver plays and the talent they have, you really think Boston's going to hold up with the crappy offense that they play and the how they're just you know, they're missing all the details on defense.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. This is the Celtics. I'm sorry, Boston was lost to the Heat and they were down 3-0. I know the series went 7, so everybody wants to act like Boston's this amazing team, but they weren't an amazing team. Like, I don't know what to tell you. The games were right there. You had the first 2 games of the conference finals at home. You lost both of them. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the argument is. So before we let's talk about the Heat for a few minutes, and then we'll go back to this disrespect for the Nuggets because it's absolutely true and deserves to be talked about. So look, I think. Look, the Heat hit their ceiling this year. Look, is this now? Everybody's going to talk about. Well, it's an 8 seed. Blah blah blah. The Heat are not a normal 8 seed. Okay, they were in the conference finals last year. They basically brought the same team back. Yeah, they weren't great in the regular season, but I hate to break it to everybody, the regular season's kind of irrelevant. If you haven't noticed, like
Yeah,
the regular season, like yes, does it matter in terms of continuity and getting your team together and learning the habits that are going to help you win in the playoffs? Yes, it does, but the regular season doesn't tell the whole story. Everybody knows that. Nobody's sitting here talking about the regular season once we get to the playoffs. That's
yeah,
all that matters. So I think the Heat did as well as you could do with this roster. Definitely got the most out of it. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of stuff the Heat could do in the offseason. I don't know what their path is going to be. I feel like I was looking at it earlier today with as far as their salary cap goes. If they were able to, everybody's talking about putting the Damian Lillard thing out there, which I don't know how realistic it is, but I will say this, that the Heat wouldn't be, if they traded for Lillard's contract and were able to, if they traded Tyler Hero and were able to get rid of Kyle Lowry's contract, they wouldn't, it would be a pretty good position cap wise for the next 2 years. Now, the issue is going to be you have, Bam, Butler, and Lillard, those 3 guys, you're going to be limited in the other stuff you can do. So it's going to make it hard to. They still have Caleb Martin for next year, but it's going to make it hard to keep Strus and Vincent. Um,
right.
So it's one of those things. I don't know. Is that what you want to do? But there's always the argument. Well, the cap is going up. Yes, it is becoming more punitive for teams going into the second apron, but the Heat would still be under that. So they, even with those 3 guys, they would have space to still get,
Right.
Another mid-level guy or whatever. So I don't know if it's, it sounds good on paper. I don't know if it's a perfect move because, Lillard's not a great defensive player. And I don't know if you would be able to, keep you to be able to have a good enough team around that to go anywhere. But it feels to me like the Heat are, if they could upgrade, get another scorer or get a third guy who could score. I feel like that would be an upgrade. And also remember the Heat didn't have Tyler Hero in this series, so I'm not saying they would beat Denver with Tyler Hero, but I do think it is a little different when you lose a 20-point a game scorer.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, again, we'll see what all they're able to do. I mean, put it this way. I don't think there is a move out there for any of these teams that's like, we're now going to win the championship. That's not the case this offseason. Okay. In fact, it's rarely the case. All right.
Right.
I mean, every now and then it happens, but so I don't, when people are doing, just remember that, guys, when you, in the off season, when people are talking about Phoenix, okay, and they're like, oh, well, they just did this and this, then that means, really, really, you're that confident in that when DeAndre Ayton is kind of, we don't know what's going on with him, and then you got Booker and Durant who score, but how do you have a system for everybody else to get other people easy shots? Are you able to play enough? There's nothing really out there. And by the way, even if the Heat do trade for Damian Lillard, I'd be fine with that. That'd be cool. That'd be fun to watch. Does that win the championship? I don't know. But I don't know that anybody trading for Damian Lillard is going to win the championship. I mean, I don't
Right.
know. Like I said, there's nothing really out there. So you can really just try to improve what you can, and then you just get into a series, and then you try to figure things out. So,
What do you since you brought up Phoenix, it's reported. It looks like nothing's happened yet, but Phoenix is talking about waiving Chris Paul, which means he'd be available for other teams to try to pick him up off waivers or sign him if he becomes a free agent. I don't think at this point, like you brought up, I don't think Chris Paul's a difference maker at this point. I
No.
don't think he's making the difference between a team that's close and a team winning the title. I
Yeah.
think there's some teams that are interesting. I think the Boston Celtics are interesting. Even if you just got, like, this is how I look at it. Like, Chris Paul on a high salary, no, obviously he's not going to be on any good teams. But Chris Paul, if he's getting the mid-level exception or lower, then I think it could be like, I think of Chris Paul, like, remember when the Lakers in the bubble, they had Rajon Rondo,
Yeah.
and he kind of came off the bench. He could run the offense for short stints, and he would make the right play. He was a veteran, really helped them. That's how I'm thinking of Chris Paul at this point. That's what I think he could do for a team. Like, if he goes to Boston, he's like, okay, I'll come off the bench. I'll be like Kyle Lowry is for the Heat this year. I'll come off the bench. I'll help you run the offense. I'll make sure you guys get into the right stuff. You don't have to wear him out during the regular season. That's the role that I see him playing that I think could work. I think Boston would be an interesting team.
Yeah.
I think if like Dallas decided to not keep Kyrie, I think Chris Paul would be interesting there. I think if I thought about Milwaukee, but they already have Drew Holiday, who's pretty small.
Right.
So I don't think you can play two small guards. I don't think it's a bad move for the Lakers. Like, again, if it's the right price point, that's the thing. If it's cheap enough, then yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of teams you could name, good teams that he could really help.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's like, it could be interesting, but again, I don't think it makes a difference. But the way the media is, they're going to make a big deal out of it.
Right.
I mean, remember when Steve Nash and Dwight Howard went to the Lakers?
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, they're going to win the championship. And Steve Nash immediately broke down. Dwight Howard, he still had a back problem. It really didn't matter. No one ever accounts for that when they're making these predictions or they're reacting to these trades that happen. They just react to the name. So,
right.
Yeah, like I said, I'm picking Denver. And then, look, I think there's interesting stuff this offseason, like what's going to happen with Milwaukee.
The Warriors.
Yeah, the Warriors. Okay. I don't want to say the Damian Lillard thing because I don't know that anything's going to happen. It's fun to talk about, right, but it's like the Bradley Beal thing. It's like, he's got to go request a trade. Like,
yeah, I don't even think there's no point even talking about Damian Lillard really until after the draft because right, Portland has a decision to make with the third pick, and then right, we'll be able to have something to talk about in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I think it's I agree with you. I think Chris Paul's a marginal player for a good team at this point.
For instance, I mean, I could see that being interesting.
Right,
but basically, again, that, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have to be healthy in the playoffs,
right.
Then I could see maybe that becomes a thing. But again, that's such an unknown, But I mean, look, he does have a house. Chris Paul does have a house in Los Angeles. He did play on the Clippers previously. They could use a point guard, because that's why they went and got Russell Westbrook. So, maybe. But yeah, I don't really, none of this other stuff really, I don't know. A lot of the stuff with the Kyrie Irving thing, like, I am interested to see what happens there because if Dallas decides to give Kyrie a long-term contract, they're really screwing themselves, so.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing there. I can't, it's just I feel like Dallas is kind of sealing their fate if they give Kyrie Irving a 3 or 4 year contract. You can they're kind of digging their own grave. It's gonna be pretty difficult for me to buy them as a contender because we talked about this before. Dallas only have so many bullets left in their gun, and if they use one of them on Kyrie Irving, I don't know what's left for that team. I don't know how.
Yeah, I just, to me, it felt like a panic move, because they were in the playoffs when they made the trade.
Yeah.
Now were they going to win the championship? No, but they at least had some defense, or and a little bit of shooting around Luka, so it at least made a little more sense. And now it's like, God, what do if you go long term in that, how are you going to improve the team? You
Right.
better really draft and develop, or find some guys in the G League or something. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll obviously have much more off-season stuff once the season's actually over. So all right, so let's talk about Jokic. I've been going through this the last couple of days, looking at all the really bad Jokic takes. Um, it's kind of insane at this point that the guy's won the MVP twice. He's about to be the Finals MVP, and people are still trying to find. It's there's two things about this that just at this point that just bother me. Number one is that all of the disrespect that Jokic got up to this point and still getting from some people. Number one, and number two, the people who now are just going, "Oh my God, this guy's unbelievable." Like, I mean, I don't even know. It's like I don't know what we're. I get it. We're in the finals. We're going to critique and do all this stuff with these guys at this point. But it's like I've been saying this for a while now. I don't know that Jokic is a significantly better player than he was a couple of years ago. I just think the team around him is perfectly set up for him. And so, and he's got his second best players actually healthy. Amazing how that works. So in the last 4 years, when Jamal Murray's been healthy, they've made the conference finals and they're about to win the championship. I don't know what evidence you people need where you're like, yeah, I don't know if he's top five. It's just like, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. So I was watching this thing on, I think it was the Rich Eisen show, and they had a guest host, and he was basically saying like, look, if you want to win a championship, you've got to have one of those all-time elite guys. And he's like, I don't think Jokic is one of those guys, and now this is obviously before they made the run to the finals and everything like that. This is everybody doing their, I don't think he's that good. And then they win the championship. Like, oh my God, he is that good. And actually he was pretty much the same the whole time.
Well,
So,
the other thing you could say this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, he talks about, oh, well, they lost in the first round to Portland like 4 years ago. It's like, yeah, because it was basically their first playoff run. Then they lost to Phoenix in the second round. Phoenix is the team that went to the finals. When they're out there with Monty Morris and Gary Harris and Austin Rivers and this team of, guys that are not in rotations for playoff teams for the most part. Then they lose to Golden State last year in the first round. Yeah, Golden State won the championship, and again, mostly, they finally at that point they finally had traded for Aaron Gordon, but Porter was injured, Jamal Murray was out. Like, not a legit championship roster, and of course, yeah, they don't win the championship. What a shock! They don't really look great in the playoffs. It's like. And the thing is, like, by the way, it's not like, and everyone's going to say, oh, well, how could we see this coming? They showed you. If you did, and everybody acts like the bubble didn't happen. They showed you in the bubble how good that team had, how capable they were. They showed you what it could be, and everybody's like, whatever, just kind of blows it off. And then we crap on Jokic for the next 2 years because his team doesn't win in the playoffs. It's like, yeah, but he won the MVP. They should win in the playoffs, even though the two things have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that, look, when Giannis won, okay, because basically he won 3 years ago, and they've had basically the same roster the last 2 years since. Okay, when he won, it was fair to look at it and go, could he win more titles with this group, right? And unfortunately, they had some injuries, and then coaching kind of held them back. And they didn't even make the finals the last 2 years. The Nuggets are in a similar situation where they're probably going to win this year, and they are set up to contend for the next 2 or 3 years. So,
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm just saying they have as good of a chance as some of these other teams to potentially win multiple titles. So, and I think in some ways you could say they're better set up than Milwaukee was, because Michael Malone's a better coach than Budenholzer, and the way their roster's constructed, it makes perfect sense, and they can sort of cover up issues that they have. The Bucks continue to have an issue where it's like, well, you don't want Giannis touching the ball at the end because you don't want him shooting free throws, and then Middleton basically just started flaming out, and it seems like he kind of declined as a player. Drew Holiday's too inefficient. Whereas Denver, like Michael Porter Jr. is inefficient, and it doesn't matter. They're going to win the finals in 5 games.
Right.
Jokic gets in foul trouble, and it doesn't matter. So to me, they're almost set up better than that. Is it going to happen? I don't know. I can't predict the future. Someone could get hurt, or some other team could emerge that I'm not thinking of. But they have a really good shot to rattle off, a couple more titles after this one. So, hopefully they more get their due. But I still think people are going to find some way to downplay it. But
yeah, and the thing is, like, yeah, no, and I get the and the thing is, like, the comparison with the San Antonio Spurs, like, I get it, but Tim Duncan was not that exciting like this. Tim Duncan was not putting on a show, like, and I know everybody's like, oh well, he's boring, he's not that interesting. It's like, man, if you're saying that, like, I'm very strong on this, then you just don't like basketball. Period. If you're not recognizing how great this guy is and you're not enjoying this, like, I don't know what to tell you, man, because this is what basketball's about. The best players ever, this is what they've done. This is how they play. This is how Magic Johnson played. This is how Larry Bird played. Like, this is how LeBron's basically played. And, everyone's knocking it. And the other thing is, like, we talked to, there were a lot of talk about this. Well, defensively, he's got some issues. Okay. He has some issues in that he's not Anthony Davis defensively, but he's a very good defensive center. And when he's at the rim, everybody acts like, oh, he's not a rim protector. When he's at the rim, I'm watching it in the finals. People are not, they're trying to shoot jump shots over him because they don't want to go to the rim against him. When he's standing there,
yep.
It's different. It affects you. So I'm sorry he doesn't lead the league in block shots and doesn't make all these sexy defensive plays. I get it. But the guy is really solid. Does everything you need him to do.
Yeah.
There's a couple really bad takes about this that I just want to put out there. That just, I mean, it's a parade of this. So Nick Wright basically said, I think he said this last year, before this run, obviously, but that Jokic is the worst MVP in the last 35 years, which is just just completely asinine, just to act like, well, whatever. And it's just, this is what bothers me, is that the media who covers the sport, it's your job to cover the sport and tell us what's going on, and you guys can't figure out that this guy's great. I can clearly see that he's fantastic, but you guys can't. It's just too hard for everybody because, they wanted somebody else to win or whatever the reason is. And then after game 2 of the finals, Skip Bayless basically said, I've never seen somebody make so many lucky shots at the rim as Jokic makes. He's like, we used to, and the funny part about this is he was like, we used to call it greasing the ball in or greasing the shots in or something like that. And every basketball player is tweeting back at him like, no one says that. No one in the history of basketball has ever said that. They're all like, what are you talking about? So it's just like, no, I'm sorry, he got lucky, and he had, like, I don't know how many points he had in game 2, where he had 41 points, right? He had 41 points in game 2, and it's like, but he made so, I've never seen somebody make so many lucky shots at the rim. It's just like, really? Like, that's what we're going to do? I'm blown away by this. I don't understand, and then you've got the Kendrick Perkins thing, where Kendrick Perkins is basically accusing him of stat padding. He's saying he's going to win the MVP because there's too many white voters who vote for the MVP. It's just like, it's clueless to me. And you just watch them play. Like, he's significantly better than Joel Embiid. Like, I know Embiid won the MVP, and I have no problem with him winning a regular season award, but there's no question as to who the better player is. Jokic is way better offensively, and defensively is not that far away. Embiid plays defense sometimes. Like, you'll see him, he'll kind of take it easy through a lot of games. He does not play defense like Anthony Davis does or like Giannis does. So, yeah, I just I'm blown away by the, and then, Nick Wright has the nerve to say, well, I'm sorry, we're going to talk about more interesting things. Yeah, but that's the point. Like you can't tell me, I've been bringing this up ad nauseum. You can't tell me, well, he's getting plenty of respect, and then at the same time tell me, but there are more interesting things we should talk about. Because that means you're not giving him the proper respect. Because that's what we should be talking about. This guy is a one of a kind. Like there's no other player like this. Never been a big guy like this. So it's we need to praise Nikola Jokic for how great he is. We need to understand that when he actually has the right team around him, look what happens.
Well,
they're going to win a lot.
Yeah, the whole thing that he's terrible on defense is bullshit. The whole narrative that Steph Curry's terrible on defense is bullshit. Okay, now do they have limitations? Yeah, they have limitations. So does basically every other player. Okay, so and by the way, like Giannis has some limitations, but I would argue the Bucks didn't set things up well enough or coach well enough around him to cover that up. They put him in some bad spots. So, it's just, but again, this is how this is going to go. This is really how this is going to go. People are just, and some of it is, like Keyshawn Johnson, he's just a Lakers fan. Okay? So he doesn't really want to give anybody else credit. Literally, if you listen to him, he never wants to give anybody else credit. So the whole offseason, he's going to be talking about the Lakers are going to win the championship because they're going to, maybe they make a couple moves or something like that. And no one's going to care about Denver. Everyone's going to be like, whatever, they won a championship. It's not a big, like Nick Wright was talking about, this is going to be 5 years where we've had a different champion every year. Well, that is unique, but I mean, look,
not really.
Denver could break that streak pretty quickly here, so.
Right. Well, and it's partly because, and the reason for that, like there's good reasons for that, right? The Warriors, Durant left. So they won a championship last year, but they weren't able to keep it going. Toronto, Kawhi left. Right? Yep. The Lakers in the bubble. The Lakers won the championship in the bubble. Then they made the stupid Russell Westbrook trade. Phoenix made the finals, then fell apart. Like, there's clear and obvious reasons as to why that's happened. So yeah, I just it blew me away. I'm just watching YouTube videos today, and I can't believe how many people just completely missed the boat on this. Where if you listen to any smart basketball person, they've been telling you the whole time, no, this guy's great.
Yeah, well, and he's going to win the Finals MVP too. So people aren't going to be able to use that. So literally, he's going to have 2 MVPs, a championship, and a Finals MVP, and people are going to be like, "Yeah, I think he's padding stats." Okay, fine, and you can also waste your breath telling me how great Russell Westbrook is. Okay.
Meanwhile, Jokic is Meanwhile, Jokic is probably top 20 all time, and you want to talk about centers? He's probably top 5, one of the top 5 centers ever. Like that's what we're talking about, but no one wants to acknowledge that. Because Clark, I feel like now, because we've had enough of this generation where everybody's everybody's giving hot takes, and it's cemented in everybody's mind now that if somebody wants to like break in, especially in the NBA, somebody wants to break into the top 20 or top 10 players ever, like there's this legion of people with pitchforks coming after you if you have the audacities to suggest the guy that won the MVP twice is awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was like during the season when LeBron broke Kareem's record, and they're like, "Yeah, he's not a great scorer." Oh, okay, he's the all-time leading scorer, but he's not great at it. Okay, all right. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. I really don't. I just okay. You're wrong, but okay.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if Denver's likely to win. If they win, will people give him the credit? Will it be a will we bow down to the Jokic altar? Will people get it right after getting it wrong all this time? And I think, Clark, I got to tell you, I think that's part of it. I think because people were not wanting to be in on Jokic from 3 or 4 years ago, that they can't come off of it now. They can't resist that take. Oh, here's another one. Stephen A. Smith was on First Take, and he's like, yeah, but I don't think Jokic is that great as a post player. Like, he's not the best, whatever. And JJ Redick goes, Stephen A. Smith, over the last 10 years, the most efficient play in basketball is Jokic posting up. So, he's not that good a post player. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what are you watching? He's the best post player in the league. He's probably one of the best ever. Like, watch this guy. Yeah. Like, I love Giannis. Don't get me wrong. Giannis is not a post player like this.
No.
The spin moves, the drop steps, the whatever. He's got the whole Kevin McHale package. And he's huge.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we could go on about that. And I'm sure that, this will stick in my craw and I'll be complaining about it next weekend. But for the time being, we're going to move on.
Well, yeah, just remember, you heard it here first, that I'm just saying, over the offseason, this is what's going to happen. You're going to see discrediting of Denver and all these people talking about all this stuff over here that I think is BS. So just remember that when it happens.
Yep. And the Miami Heat culture is a fraud. Doesn't mean anything. Even though the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Sixers are all sitting at home because they weren't good enough. But Heat culture is irrelevant. Doesn't make any difference. Anyway, so moving on. So I thought, honestly, Clark, this is one of the most shocking developments in sports as an about face. Like, probably the most ridiculous about face I've ever seen in my life. So I get up the other morning and I see that they have announced that the PGA Tour, Live Golf, and the DP World Tour are merging, and they're going to form one corporation. For golf. So golf will be unified from now on. And, my initial thoughts, like, first of all, I couldn't believe, like, first of all, this fast, like, it's not the most shocking thing in the world that there would be a merger. Like, I get that, but I thought it would be down the road. I thought this would, the way the PGA Tour has talked about this and used every moral argument and argument against Saudi Arabian money and how can you take their blood money and who are these golfers and you've never had to apologize for being on the PGA Tour. All of these things that now I realize were just ploys to try to get guys to not go to the Live Tour. It's just crazy to me that the limb that all the PGA Tour and all of these, especially the media, went out on to just rip these guys apart for how dare you take Saudi Arabian money, even though their money's infiltrated all kinds of things in America. I was just in shock. I couldn't believe that this was what happened. And it was like, really? Like, now, really? You're going to do that? Like, you did all of this hemming and hawing, all of the giving everybody a hard time, and you're just, all right, we're good, we'll merge. It just kind of, I was blown away by that. So what were your initial thoughts?
Okay, so beyond the hypocrisy stuff, because that's, obvious. It's disappointing but the reason it's disappointing is this may take me a little bit. So it's yet another example of how money trumps everything. Not just making money, but always making more money. Okay.
Right.
And that's more important than everything else. And this is, again, I don't want to act like sports is unique in this way. The rest of, the United States and the rest of the world, well, I'll just talk about the United States, particularly the United States. This is how society is now. The most important thing is making money and then making more money. All other principles be damned. Okay? And so sometimes sports, I was thinking about this too, like sometimes sports, things will happen in sports before they happen in the rest of society. This isn't necessarily like that because this is already kind of happening in society. There's already Saudi money in the United States in other ways. There's already Chinese money in the United States in a lot of ways. And probably money from a bunch of other countries too. So yeah, it's not, but I do think this is an area where maybe this is going to wake some people up to the idea that, this sort of interconnected world that we've got now is really, you create opportunities for really messed up stuff to happen. I mean, again, it's Saudi Arabia's not unique. I mean, China has a horrible human rights record. Okay. But I mean, just focusing on Saudi Arabia, I mean, theirs is really terrible too. I mean, they basically killed a journalist. You know, they helped harbor terrorists that were involved in 9/11. So yeah, it's really bad. It's depressing. And it's also, to me, the most depressing thing is this is just another example of, you look at it and you go, God, can I watch golf now? And it's like, well, you could say that about other sports. I mean, the NBA,
Right.
which we spend tons of time talking about, they make tons of money in China, and China is terrible. The people making your iPhones, the people involved in mining cobalt, which you need to make batteries for a lot of the devices we use and like electric cars and stuff. I mean, go on YouTube and look that up. The conditions that those people work in, they're like human slaves. I mean, it's horrible. So, yeah, it's another instance where things are just kind of depressing, and it you know there's really no way. And it is funny though, like, is the PGA hypocritical? Yes, but basically, if you live in society right now, there's no way for you not to be a hypocrite. I mean, the
Right.
clothes you're wearing, the devices you're using, the car you're driving, uh, so many different things. I mean, do you bank at a certain place that's been screwing around and, might have been involved in the financial crisis from, 15 years ago or whatever? Um, it's just, this is kind of the way things are. I don't know that there's a fix for it. And also, it's going to keep happening. Okay? If you thought watching football was difficult because of all the head injuries, just wait until, Saudi money comes in and buys an NFL team or China or whatever. I mean, and hell, you could be critical of Amazon because of the way they treat their workers, and now they own Thursday Night Football. So it's just, again, yeah, it's just all this interconnected stuff. There's no way to avoid giving money to or supporting something that's against whatever your beliefs are. It's
Well,
really
and
important.
I think I can wrap my brain around that. What blows me away? Yes, it's the hypocrisy. Yes, but PGA Tour took a stand. They were using people whose relatives died in 9/11 to try to portray this as a moral issue. Most sports that doesn't happen. They don't go out on a limb and try to make it
Right.
into they question other people's morality. What the PGA Tour did is just, to me, that's beyond the pale. And then to go back on that, like, they have ruined, they really have, to this, their reputation is going to really take a hit because of this. That's really what I believe. Just because of the way they have treated some of these people, that they acted like they were on their side, and they weren't. They were completely on their own side. And I understand, like, that's how it works. I'm not naive to that, but I'm just blown away with the force and the anger and frustration that other golfers were showing towards. It just blows my mind. I watched that Netflix show, Full Swing, and a lot of that they talk about, the live situation, and it's just like, they're like, screw Phil Mickelson, and they're like angry at all these golfers who went to live, and it's just like, all of that seemed nonsensical to me. I never understood, like, so let me get this straight. PGA Tour, you're just gonna like if these guys want to go play on the live tour, fine. Well, you should still let them play on the PGA Tour. Like, why would you? These are the guys that people want to see. I didn't understand, the treating them like second class citizens. It just kind of blew me away. And um the other thing is that I don't understand why we're treating these golfers as if they're supposed to be the ones that are supposed to stand up for everybody's rights when our country doesn't even do it. The United States is involved with Saudi Arabia, but you don't hear anything. There's no complaints about that. So it just kind of like, I find it really strange to me that we've put golfers front and center on what's right and what's wrong as far as, these countries in the Middle East. It just kind of, it's a really weird situation. When you brought it up, all these other sports are involved in a lot of things that are not real good. They're pretty unsavory.
Well, and it's going to continue to happen. That's and then it's just the. I mean, God, if you're playing professional golf, you don't have a choice now.
Right.
You're taking money from. So it's like, I mean, it's hard for me to necessarily feel bad for professional golfers who make a lot of money, but I mean, yeah, that does suck. And then one of the things that kind of I guess my overriding point, like just for example, you brought up the PGA Tour. They're a nonprofit, right?
Right.
Okay, they're a nonprofit, and then they took a stand on this thing, you know, and then they completely flipped over, because there's so much money involved, you know. So it's like, the idea of taking a stand purely on a moral issue or like a political issue or whatever you want to call it, and then sticking to that, money be damned, like that's gone.
Yeah.
People don't do that anymore, you know,
Yep.
which is kind of sad. I mean, you think about it, the way sports are, we're just like, we got to make more money, we got to make more money, we got to make more money. Um, and it's just like, well, let's put all the games on in prime time. It's like, well, you don't need to do that. It's like, you're still going to make money. It's just like, well, we'll put them on then because we'll make more. It's like, all right,
Well,
fine.
yeah, and there's a good example, like you brought up Thursday Night Football and that show Hard Knocks or whatever it is. Like, does the NFL need more money? Like, really? You guys aren't making, they make like 11 billion a year. You're not making enough money? So you got to do this Hard Knocks thing. You got to do all this. There's just stuff that they do now that's just not even it. Really? Like, what value are you getting out of this? And I also think, like, yeah, the PGA Tour, they need the money because they want to pay the players more because that's what the players want. But it's also to get the best players back. It's also because you want to have the number one game in town. You want to have the product, right? Well, so the the PIF, the fund for Saudi Arabia, they've got the money, and the PGA Tour has the TV contracts. So it's like, all right, if we're going to do this, this is what we're going to have to do to survive. And it just, to me, it shows you how much the PGA Tour was holding back from the players, because as soon as this live thing happened, they started increasing purses. They made tournaments, more money into tournaments. And it's like, what were you doing all this time? And it just shows you the stuff that Phil Mickelson especially has been complaining about for years and years and years. Wow, look at that. It's like amazing. They were able to figure out how to do it. But to your point earlier, what like I heard something like the PIF fund is like $600 billion. Who's to say they can't come in and go, hey, here's 200 billion. We want the whole NFL. We want the whole thing. We'll take every team. Who's to say that's not going to happen? Because right now they've got so much money they could buy all of our leagues if they wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, again, it's like and I guess we'll talk about this with college football in a second, but yeah, when you make the most important thing, and again, I'm getting a little, this is definitely off sports too, but it's just like, when you make everything in society about making more money, then, literally nothing else matters. You're going to make every decision based on that, regardless of anything else. And there's literally no endpoint to it. It's literally like, we make more money doing this. Okay, what about this? I don't really like it. We can make more money? Okay. I mean, with like expanding playoffs in sports, like, why do you think they do that? To make more money. They don't necessarily need to. I mean, college football is going to expand the playoff. You're going to lose some stuff. Yeah, you're going to make tons more money, but, you're going to lose something. So,
Well,
but it's just, it is what it is. This is what's happening.
well,
It kind of
and
sucks.
one thing I was thinking about, right? Like the PGA Tour, Live, all of this merger has nothing to do with the majors. Like the four major tournaments, those are separate entities by themselves, right?
Right.
Which are the only tournaments that anybody watches. Right? Nobody watches the RBC Canadian Open. right? Nobody's watching like we have the Honda Classic here every year, Clark. People go to it. No one watches that on TV. Like it doesn't get
Yeah.
great TV ratings. So what are we? So that's the thing. Is like what are we talking about here? So you guys made a merger because you want to have these tournaments that nobody watches anyway. So it's just kind of like, what did we do this for? Like I just find that kind of interesting because the major, like I said, the only tournaments anybody watches are the majors, and the Masters gets way better TV ratings than any of the other three majors. So what are we talking about here? So it's just kind of like that part I just find weird. Like this isn't even that popular a sport when you consider the country that we live in and the other stuff that people will watch. Like people are watching pickleball now. Like that's disturbing. So it's just kind of like, wow, we did all this, we got all crazy about this over well, this way the FedEx Cup will have the best players. It'll be great to watch the Tour Championship. So it's just kind of like, it's just so weird how small this becomes a big issue, and it's still, golf is relatively small scale when you're talking about like major sports.
Yeah.
You take the four majors out, pretty much means nothing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that this sport that's on the fringes has made this big of a deal. It's just kind of interesting to me. So anyway, yeah. So you and I were having a conversation the other day, and I thought this was kind of interesting. So I'm already starting to look at college football schedules and just try to see kind of who's going who's playing who and what the big games are and all of that. And then I was looking at over-unders and just trying to see, who everybody thinks is going to be competing for the title. So we have one more year of a 4-team playoff, and then we're going to a 12-team playoff. And so I think you brought up the point. It's like everybody wanted this. Everybody wanted to expand. We got to get more teams in. It's just not, we can't just, 4 is not enough, because all these teams, all anybody cares about is the playoff anymore. So we got to get more teams in. And so we're going to have a 12-team playoff, and it's just kind of funny to me. Like as we do this, I can see like the drawbacks of it. Now that overall, okay, I take the good with the bad. I do believe there's more good with the playoff than bad. Okay. But there are drawbacks to it. Like I brought up the point that though the Big Ten is doing away with divisions, which I think the SEC is going to do the same thing. They're doing away with divisions, which the problem with that is that the Big Ten basically, like the Michigan-Ohio State game is basically decides every year who goes to the Big Ten championship game on one side, and they always play Iowa or Michigan State or whoever they play in the championship game. But now, if there's no divisions, that means Michigan could play Ohio State, and we might have the same game 2 weeks in a row. One game will be on somebody's home field, and then the next week they'll be playing at a neutral site. Now, that may get mitigated by the fact that now USC and UCLA are in the conference, so maybe that gets mitigated a little bit. But some of these regular season games are now going to be completely useless. If you're in your conference championship game, the last weekend of the regular season means nothing, because you just want to win your conference championship game to get a top 4 seed, so you get a bye. Like that's the value in winning your conference. It's not because winning your conference saves your season, or you're not going to do anything. If you can't win your conference, you're done. So we're going to get some of these games where, especially the conference championship games will still matter, but some of them may just come down to seeding. Like Michigan, Ohio State may not. It's not going to be life or death. Whoever loses that game probably still has a really good chance to get in the playoff as an at-large team anyway. So we are going to lose that. We're going to lose some of these like major regular season games. Like, now we may get some bigger out of conference games just because it's going to be the most important thing is going to be winning your conference. That's going to be more important than anything else. So we may get a few more of those. We'll see. But yeah, there's going to be it's going to be different, and we're going to lose some of this stuff. Now, I think overall, the positives outweigh the negatives. You get home games in the first round of the playoffs. You get more teams in. Teams like Notre Dame and Clemson, they'll be able to make it every year, basically. The teams that whatever team wins the Big 12 when there's nobody in it, they'll have a chance to be in the playoff every year. So I think overall that's a good thing. But there is some stuff that's going to be lost.
Yeah. Um, okay. So yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where the games aren't going to mean as much because I mean, really, the way the way the system was set up before, it was exclusionary, right? So
Right.
before, really, I mean, it was you didn't really have a national championship game. I mean, I'm going back to the bowls. You just kind of had a few different games with the top teams, and then you kind of voted based on that. Then you had the BCS, and so it was two teams. You know, so that was exclusionary to other teams, but all the games still mattered because you lose one game, you could be done. You know,
Right.
um, you know, and that was fine, and then we moved to the 14 playoff, and I'm like, okay, if you expand beyond this, then there's going to be a bunch of games that don't mean anything, you know, because it's not as exclusionary, and now you're letting a bunch of different teams in. So the playoff itself is going to be cool, and there's still going to be some good regular season games, but it's not going to have the import that it had before, and it's not. You're going to lose some of what made college football unique compared to the other sports. So, it just is what it is. It'll probably expand beyond 12 at some point. And just, the people, there's going to be people who start complaining eventually, like, oh man, what did we've lost something. And it's going to be like, well, there were some people saying that. But again, this is one of those things where, the college football wanted to make more money. So, okay, you know, it is what it is. There's still some good stuff with it, but again, you're going to lose something, and it's not, like, look, the NFL's cool, but college football always had something that made it unique. All the arguing, all the like, well, what how do we judge who the best team is? We can't just do it based on their record, you know. So it is what it is, I just, people are going to start. I think there's going to be some people complaining later, and it's going to be like, well, you didn't see this coming.
Yeah. No, I think that I think there's some value lost in the regular season. And these conferences are expanding, but we're not playing more regular season games. So it's almost like you could see this just going the other way, where it's just teams are not playing. We're losing. We get some better play. We get more playoff games, right? But during the regular season, we don't get the same level of. So it's kind of like, man, you could really be kind of ruining this a little bit, and you didn't need to. That with all the changes that have gone on. I mean, I understand the need for it. You can't have, now that the players are actually able to make money, you can't have, well, we'll just have four teams and not give, you got to give more teams a shot, because it kind of narrows it down to where the best schools are basically have a monopoly on the best players. And so it makes it really difficult. But, you and I have been talking about this for years. There aren't four really good teams in college football. Usually there's usually two, and then maybe a third, and then that's about it. There's never been, like, in my lifetime, I can't remember a year where it's like, oh, there's four unbelievable teams in college football, and we're gonna have 12 in the playoff. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Like, I can understand it, like, in a and it's weird. Like, the NBA's playoffs are really long, and 99% of those teams have no shot to win the championship. So it's just kind of, it's really bizarre how we choose to do this. We're going to put 12 teams in, but 9 of them have no shot.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a different. It's kind of what are you valuing more with the playoffs? Are you legit trying to find the best team, or are you just trying to give more people a chance? Because teams want to be in there for the extra revenue, for those extra games.
Yep.
And that's kind of the way things have moved in all the major sports. So it just kind of is what it is. And again, you do kind of lose something, and that's why, and I've said this many 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 times, a playoff is not necessarily the best way to crown a champion.
Right.
I mean, like, they don't do this in, like, European soccer, really. I mean, unless you have, like, the UEFA, or you have the World Cup or whatever. It's like, it's not really a playoff thing. It's basically like, over the course of a season, how good are you? How many games do you win and all that stuff? So, and that's really, if you want to talk about finding the best team, that's really the better way to do it, because when you introduce variance into it, then a team that's not as good can win, because especially in football, it's a one game scenario. It doesn't happen as much in baseball or um, basketball or hockey, because it's just over a 7 game series. It's just very hard for the team that's not as good to win. So
Yeah, I think we're still searching for that balance, Clark. The good regular season and playoffs together, right? We're still searching for it.
well, you could argue it was the 4 team playoff or it was the BCS. Really, I mean, then I'd probably say the 4 team playoff, because then you kind of you're more making sure that the better teams are there, and right. So that's probably the best way, where you get the balance, because if it's a little less than that, then maybe there's a team or two that gets screwed. But if it's more than that, then you're letting in teams that are like, they're not really.
I'm a in general, my basic theory on sports and crowning a champion is in general less regular season games, more playoff games. I want more games that matter. And college football already gives us a whole bunch of games, especially in the first month of the season, that are completely useless.
Yep.
So at least like you brought up the Premier League, like in the Premier League, they play 38 regular season games. You play each team twice, once on your field, once on their field. It's perfectly even. Okay, and then whoever's the best team after those 38 games, you're the champion. And that's all there and that's all there is. That's all there is to it. In the Champions League, there's 6 games, in the group stage, and then if you make it all the way to the finals, you play 4 different teams or whatever it is. So it's I just think I think in basketball we've got this completely wrong. We got way too many regular season games. And really needs to be cut back. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like I'm good with the playoffs. Even the playoffs are maybe a little too long. But I feel like we got to do like for some reason in American sports we have all these regular season games. We have 82 in basketball, 82 in hockey, 162 in baseball. I haven't figured it out. NFL, why do we need 7? We don't need 17 games. I don't understand why a lot of these our regular seasons are just way too damn long. But yeah,
you probably don't even need 16 games in the NFL.
No.
I mean, really, with 14? I mean, at one point there were 14. Like,
right.
It's just.
Yeah, it's a bit insane, especially in football where everybody gets hurt and you never know who's going to play. So yeah, I think we're gonna lose some stuff with college football, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I mean, not this season. Obviously, we still have 4 teams this season, but we'll see what happens in 2024. I think the playoffs will be a success, but I think the damage it may do to the regular season may.
Yeah, and also remember, it never fails. People didn't like the system before the BCS, right? We got to get something else. They get the BCS, they hate it. They hate the BCS. Then we're getting a 4 team playoff. Then they do it and they're like, this is crap. This is terrible. We hate this. They're going to move to a 12 team playoff, and mark my words, they're going to find some way, and it's not going to be what you and I are talking about. They're going to find some way to say some teams should be getting in, and they're not. Like, literally,
Right.
they're going to find some way to do that. It's going to be the most ridiculous thing ever. They're going to be like, the 13th best team in the, whatever. And it's like, really, dude? So.
Yeah. All right, that's all we got for today. Well, real quick before we go, Clark, Denver Nuggets. You think they're going to win Game 5? I mean, I think they probably win, but
I'm going to watch, but I think they're probably going to win. I think, and when you get into a situation like this, there's a chance of the wheels falling off.
right.
Which I think there's a pretty good chance of that happening, but we'll see. Maybe Miami can, make it interesting. If they get really hot from 3, maybe they can win the game. But
I think Miami, no matter what happens, I know the Heat are going to fight to the end. There's not going to be They're not going to roll over like Boston did. Like there's not going to be a, I know that's not, I know this Heat team and that's not going to happen. They may get beat, but it'll be like it was the last two games where they get beat because the other team's better, not because they didn't try hard enough or they didn't bring the energy or intensity or whatever.
Right.
So, all right, folks, by next weekend, we'll have an NBA champion and we'll have some more stuff to talk about. So everybody have a nice weekend. Thanks for tuning in.